I had the opportunity over the weekend to read one of, I think, the most important articles that I think has ever been written and deserves an awful lot of attention from the media. It won't get it, of course, but that's because the media won't like the gist of the political, direction of this particular article. But it's written by Emeritus Professor John Raine, who I explained to you before was a Professor of Engineering and I think a Pro-Vice Chancellor at Massey University, as he was, and also by a Mass lecturer and a teacher of some renown, not only at Victoria University but also in Perth as well, Dr. David Lillis. And they together drafted or published an article that is headlined, "Can a Te Tiriti-led university be politically neutral?" In some ways, it's not as important as I thought the opening paragraph, which was, and I'll read it to you to get some sort of flavour of it, and then I'll introduce you to David. The opening paragraph starts, "In The Treason of the Intellectuals, Sir Niall Ferguson describes parallels between a new politicisation of universities throughout the Western world and that which occurred in the German Weimar Republic in the 1920s, resulting in German universities such as Heidelberg and Tübingen losing their top international rankings. Driven by critical social justice ideology, this politicisation has resulted in universities, notably in Australia, Canada, New Zealand, the UK and the USA, moving away from institutional political neutrality and away from a primary focus on excellence in teaching and research towards the imposition of the critical social justice politics of diversity, equity and inclusion. Unfortunately, CSJ ideology, critical social justice ideology, denies the existence of objective truths, is intolerant of dissenting views, and tends to be anti-science." And it carries on in that vein for the next 6 pages, and there are many academic references on the way. Joining us to talk about this article and the thoughts contained and the dangers that exist is the co-author of that, David Lillis, and he joins us now. David, thank you so much for joining us. Lovely to have you on.
Thank you so much for inviting me. Now, just a clarification. I adhere to neither a left-wing nor a right-wing perspective. I believe that all of us should, at all times, evaluate policies, political parties, individuals, and so forth on merit. Okay, so I come from that perspective. And when I make my judgments and evaluations and go into print on matters relating to education or science or the universities, I do so from the heart and on the basis of my professional experience. I want to get that out of the way. I'm neither left wing nor right wing.
I'm not suggesting you are.
No. Just clarification. So look, but by the way, I'm actually not a lecturer at Victoria University. I have tutored there in the very distant past. I also want to recognise that Emeritus Professor John Raine is the linchpin in much of the stuff that we write. Okay, so let's.
Well, actually, just before you start on that, how did you and he get together on that? How did you get that synthesis?
We've known each other. We've known each other for at least a year. We share confidences about the system. We share, our perspectives on education, on science, and so forth. And maybe 7 or 8 months ago, he and I decided to go into print. In 1 or 2 of our articles, we've included distinguished Professor Peter Schwertfeger, who was a theoretical physicist and chemist at Massey University. But what we do is from the heart. It's not meant to create trouble. It's meant to highlight problems that we see within the university system and in education generally, and also in science funding, and to put it out there in such a way that we can influence for the good. This is the motivation that we have. So
I understood that, but believe me, by arguing against the conventional ideological norm, you are going to be something of a upsetter, aren't you?
Well, absolutely. I personally have been labelled as a racist. I know other people who have stood up against what's going on in New Zealand who have been labelled negatively as well. So look, It does seem to me, this is coming from myself, it does seem to me that we do have various agendas abroad in New Zealand, and they're seen in other countries as well. Critical social justice is one, maybe postmodernism is another, postmodernism. And the concern that I have is that the influence of these sorts of agendas is actually a negative influence on education and on our tertiary system. Critical social justice, as you may know, sees society as segmented in various ways, along sociological lines, along race-based lines and so forth, and sees the world in terms of oppressor versus oppressed. And so any inequality in the present is usually ascribed to racism and rampant bias and the oppressor versus oppressed syndrome. On the other hand, we also have postmodernism, and it's not just a guess that postmodernism is abroad in New Zealand. I'm aware of various thought leaders within our universities who happily admit to espousing this particular ideology, and my view is that they should leave that particular ideology at home and not try to ram it right through the tertiary system. And postmodernism appears to me to be, challenging the good things that came out of the Enlightenment, challenging Western civilization and the hegemony of Western thinking and Eurocentric thinking. And I have no problem with that. Everything should be open to challenge. The problem here is it seems to deny the existence of objective truth and seems to me to be antithetical to science. And this is deeply worrying when we really need our tertiary environment, as well as our secondary education system and our science funding systems, to be purely objective and to be based on rational thinking and objectivity and based on the evidence. Now,
can I just take you on that? So go back to that concept that you are suggesting. So critical social justice, you're saying, and it's certainly being taught when it comes to Treaty of Waitangi issues, frames the world you've just said as oppressor and oppressed. So I'm assuming that the oppressed in this particular juncture around treaty issues are the local indigenous Maori, and the oppressors are people who are not Maori or who come from a particular historic background. English extraction, white Europeans. Is that right?
I guess you'd have to ask them. I guess I would infer that what you're saying is absolutely true. And so what I want to emphasize here in this discussion is the critical importance of political neutrality, institutional and political neutrality. There's a phone of mine that's insisting on going off. I thought I'd turn it off.
I'll let you do that.
I'll turn it off. I wasn't expecting that. Okay, so sorry for that interruption.
That's all right. No, carry on.
So, the critical importance of political neutrality for the university. And unfortunately, given the trajectories that these people are sending the universities on at the moment, we are losing political neutrality. Now, I don't
losing
know whether
or lost, can I ask, David?
I think we've lost it in large measure, may not absolutely. And maybe it's true to say that we are turning a corner at the moment. I hope we are. I see certain signs that maybe we are turning a corner. But I wonder whether you have heard of a thing called the Calvin Report. Have you heard of the Calvin Report?
I have not. Is it spelled CALVIN?
No, KALVEN. This is a report, effectively a statement of the position of one particular university, that's the University of Chicago, in the year of 1967. And it sets out the principles for its university, the University of Chicago. But there are lessons in there from 1967 for us in the present. The University of Chicago, enshrined in its Calvin Report, made it clear that political neutrality is absolutely obligatory for any university if it's to fulfill its function and its mission towards society. And its function and mission towards society has to do with the generation of knowledge, and the delivery of first-class teaching and first-class research.